Hey guys, it's Jared here from How Low Can You Slow, and I am here with Ben from Butcher Tindale on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. My pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me here.
Very excited. So basically, I connected with Ben through some of your sort of posts that I found on social media. Some of your stuff got picked up by some pretty big sort of businesses or social media accounts. I don't know if it was like BuzzFeed or something, but it was something pretty big that picked up some of the stuff that I found.
So it was, I was contacted by the Lad Bible group, and they basically asked if I'd be happy for them to kind of create a compilation of my TikToks. And elated, I said yes.
Yeah.
Didn't hear anything else from it for a while and just thought, well, it'll happen when it happens.
Sure.
And I think it was purely by chance that they actually chose to share the content just as we're beginning National Butchers Week. So I think it's a UK event. We have National Butchers Week just to celebrate the trade, the industry. And yeah, it was really nice to kind of kickstart that. Thought that was amazing. And then they put that through their Food Bible account, and then it went through onto the Lad Bible at the end of the week, which was, again, it's really surreal.
That's amazing. So the stuff that I saw and the stuff that you can find on your social media is sort of, it's an expansion of what I would normally consider sort of like traditional butchery. So can you explain a little bit about what you do and why that's sort of different to what people might expect that you would normally do?
All right. So the majority of the content that I'm putting out, whether that's images or videos, is what we know in the trade as a value-added products. So like you say, we have a traditional butcher in the shop. We get like sides or quarters of animals coming in that we break down and butcher into the joints, the steaks, the prepared products that you know. But then what I kind of share is where we go one step further. We're kind of making a product that either the consumer doesn't have the skills to make, or the consumer wants basically to make their life easier. It is basically a product of convenience. We all live busier lives now, and so we kind of take some steps out for our customers, making it easier for them.
Yeah, very cool. It's interesting because my Instagram focuses on like, I like the stuff to look good because it's a visual medium. I make it look good when it's cooked, but your stuff, it looks incredible and it's still uncooked, which I think is really, really interesting. Are you finding that a lot of customers, and this is purely just for interest's sake, do they buy more of the traditional stuff, or are they sort of moving more towards those value-added products, those things that are pre-prepared for them?
So it's kind of generational. We have a lot of the older customers are still going for those your traditional cuts, your standard fare in a butcher shop, and then it will be kind of the younger generations that will be interested in buying like cuts and then inquiring kind of how to utilize them, how to cook them to their best, but then they'll be drawn towards kind of the prettier items that we make as well.
Yeah, very cool. So I'll definitely make sure that we sort of add a link to your socials in places where people can find these in the actual captions for this. But I guess what I'd really like to sort of ask a little bit about is, what are some of the things that, like some examples of things that you would be doing this with?
So at the moment, it's been glorious weather. So we make a selection of gourmet burgers. So we have, across the proteins, we make a selection of burgers that are like your standard fare, and you can just put them on your barbecue, cook them on your hob. But the gourmet burgers, we kind of will go that extra mile. So they will normally be stuffed, and we have a variety of sauce stuffings or cheese stuffings, and then we use a collection of different glazes to kind of enhance those flavors. You create kind of a complete profile within that product. And it can be really simple. Like a customer can then just have a bun and then they've got a much more exciting meal.
Sure. Yeah, very cool. And I can see that there's a lot of stuff that it goes really in depth. There's some stuff that's some crazy creations. I saw some really interesting ones. It might have been asparagus and nori and something else that was stuffed inside something.
Yes. Yeah.
There's some stuff where there's amazing things that you're doing with like different pastries and things. Can I ask, like, where do you find your inspiration for these things? Because there is a huge range on the things that you're creating.
So there are fellow butchers like myself that create this kind of content, and especially on Instagram, there's a lot of cross pollination, both in our own industry,
sure,
but also as we've touched on briefly in email, like the barbecue community and certainly the chef community, we kind of cross pollinate amongst each other's. You'll see like there's a lot of inspiration on almost like sushi.
Yeah.
Like kind of your Valentine's, your like classic style cooking. It's just kind of everything has pretty much been done now, but it's kind of reinventing it and finding a new way of presenting it.
Sure. Adding some of those kind of little twists to make it your own.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And so I know that in your sort of profile, some of your social media bios, it kind of refers to craft butchery. What's sort of the difference between kind of craft butchery and traditional butchery?
So craft butchery, I mean, it's a very dangerous term. It gets bandied around an awful lot.
Sure.
So I would consider traditional butchery to be at its at a standard level where you've got carcasses coming in that you're able to break down and prepare into the products that you expect to see in a normal butcher shop.
Sure.
Craft butchery, you've got different avenues that people would go down, and you can specialize in one, or you can take what you want from either. So I don't know if you have many shops in your area that have like dry aging facilities.
It's getting a lot less. I mean, I would say that traditional butcher stores or any butcher stores are getting a lot less common these days. But I'm lucky enough that there is actually a place fairly close to where I live that has that. But I would absolutely say very uncommon.
So yeah, like going down that dry aging route and enhancing the meat at its purest kind of level is an element of craft butchery.
Sure.
Certainly going down my routes and creating kind of these amazing wow products that capture the customer's imagination, create a real theatre in your display is an element of craft butchery. You could even go down the route of like charcuterie, again, which is part of adding value to a product, but there's lots of different routes you can go to kind of touch on what we would call craft butchery.
Yeah, cool. And so I know that like competitive butchery, similar sort of to competitive barbecue, can kind of cross over between some of those like traditional sort of more new age, more craft style things. And I know that you're involved in competitive butchery. So what kind of things would you normally sort of be involved in those kinds of competitions?
All right, so I'm part of Team GB Butchery, and the competition that we're preparing for currently is going to be the World Butchers Challenge, which is happening this September in Sacramento. For that event, it's going to be as a team. So we have 11 members of the team event. 6 of us will be competing on the day, and we literally have a range of proteins. So there'll be a side of beef, a side of pork, a whole lamb, and 5 chickens. And we'll be given 3 hours, 15 minutes to prepare all of that protein into a show-stopping display and clean down. Now, there's surprisingly, I believe it's about 25% of your overall marking is on the actual display. The rest of it is in the process. Things such as the cleanliness of the boning and the butchery, that traditional aspect, which always plays a part.
Sure.
You've got, of all things, your food and hygiene, your health and safety aspects as well. It's something that in our industry, we are kind of judged on very strictly by like health officials, and
Sure.
rightly so. And in that way, like it's surprising kind of what we're judged on. Like everyone
Sure.
always focuses on that amazing finished display of these products that aren't even cooked, but you want to eat
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes as well for it.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, wow. So like how many teams do you think would be competing at the event?
So from the last count, we've got 16 countries represented. And
Cool.
they are so we've got the original countries that kind of started the event were Australia and New Zealand. Team Great Britain came on pretty early. We've got the States who are hosting, Canada, Iceland, France, Germany, Italy. It's South Africa. It kind of covers the globe, so to speak.
Yeah, very cool. A friend of mine actually competed a few years ago in the event held in Australia. I don't know what year that was, but I saw some of the displays. It was incredible stuff. And I think you kind of captured it really, really well when you said, like, it's still raw meat, but it looks so beautiful that like you already kind of want to eat it. I think that's a really interesting kind of of an explanation. I think that's very, very true. Very cool.
It's something that we rely on heavily in our shops.
Sure.
So we kind of want to entice you with our products, and so whether that's through what you're visually seeing or aromas, so to speak. So we're quite happy that we haven't got the best kind of ventilation in our cooking kitchen, because then we get the aromas of like pies being baked up and whatever, and that comes through into the shop, and people walk in, it's like, what on earth are you cooking? It smells stunning. And it's kind of trying to capture all those senses.
Yeah, very cool. No, I love that. So I'm from New Zealand originally, so a good old meat pie is definitely something that I'm all about. I live in the US now, and that is the part that I miss the most. So I'm the kind of person that would be walking down the street and smell that and have to come on in. That's awesome.
Who are you going to be? Who would you be supporting, or who be rooting for?
Definitely New Zealand if they're part of the competition.
They are.
Yeah, very cool. I know that, like, so the friend of mine, we went to high school together, so I've known him for a really long time, and I saw some of the stuff they did. I know that he's done very, very well with that. And I think traditionally New Zealand has done pretty good at these kinds of events, which is cool. We're definitely a meat-laden country, which I think is probably very helpful for it.
It helps. It does help.
Yeah.
they have a really good they have a very good infrastructure for kind of encouraging competitive events in butchery.
Yeah, cool.
I know from what I've seen, it's really well supported.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love the idea of sort of like the competitive element to it. One of the things with like competitive barbecue, which is kind of gaining a lot more popularity with sort of Netflix shows and things like that, is that I think that there's always this element of the products are different than what people would cook at home. And I'm sure that in some ways, sort of some of the things that you guys will produce on the day would be things that isn't sort of like the traditional normal things that you would do in a shop on a normal day. But I'm, just with like competitive barbecue, I'm sure there's a lot of those elements of it that are the bread and butter of the work. And I think it's really awesome for us to sort of celebrate those kind of things in whatever industry that they're found in. Just because skills are skills, and getting people who know what they're doing to compete against each other who also know what they're doing, I think is an awesome thing to do.
Definitely. It's funny you say that. One of the stipulations, all the products we create have to be a realistic cook-off for a consumer.
Cool.
So you do have that restraint. You can't go absolutely out into the stratosphere and just like make some ridiculous product. It has to be a realistic cook for a home cook. It has to be realistic, which you can't. I personally find I thrive on I can thrive creatively with restrictions.
Sure.
if someone came to me and said you can create any project you want with whatever protein, whatever flavors, I wouldn't know where to start. Whereas
Sure.
if someone comes to me and say you can only use X, Y, and Z, perfect. Like perfect. Yeah. I thrive on restriction.
Yeah.
I like to see what boundaries I can push with less.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. I'm very excited to see sort of how it goes for you guys and sort of what some of your finished products look like. I'm sure you'll post some stuff up on your socials for people who want to see. So that sounds awesome.
Definitely. They're all under lock and key at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
It's all I mean, like with the amount of content I'm posting, it's you kind of, there are things that are already out there in our community. But yeah, there are certain products that are having to sit in the drafts that I can't let loose until the competitions happen.
Sure. No, I definitely hear that. Oh, very cool. So the industry sort of as a whole with butchery, we talked a little bit about this before, about how sort of, 40, 50 years ago, the butcher shop would be sort of a staple of most communities. And these days sort of things are changing a little bit. And there's lots of things as to why that's the case. But what would you say is sort of things that are misunderstood about sort of your industry and what you do?
I still don't think it's the most attractive industry, kind of for people looking in, from the outside, which is ironic because once you're a part of it, it's very hard to get away from it. It becomes a part of your identity, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's kind of it's a running joke. Like once you start an industry, you never truly stop.
Yeah.
So I started 16 years ago. 16 years ago in March of all times, and there was kind of a period where I stepped away from butchery and went into doing music teaching of all things. But
okay,
I digress. But again, like during the summer, I'd still be coming in to cover holidays every Christmas without fail. It's ridiculous, and still be going in supporting them. And then I ended up back in the industry. It's a great place to be, and especially if you're in the right setting.
Sure,
you've got to have a good team around you.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier you've been in the same shop your whole career. That's impressive. Yeah. So obviously, there's something there that you're attracted to. That's awesome.
Definitely. I mean, for me now, I have an awful lot of creative freedom and creative leeway to kind of go where I want. I've actually got more experience as just a traditional butcher rather than the value-added side that you see me posting content for now. But yeah, it's a nice family to work with, and it's changed an awful lot in the last few years. We've got a lot of young blood coming through, 2 apprentices going through our shop and staying with us, which it's nice. It reassures you that you're doing something right.
Sure. Yeah, very cool. Oh, very cool. Okay, so one of the things that sort of like when it comes to barbecue, which is obviously sort of my world, butchery is one of those things where it's a real skill, and people, there's an apprenticeship program. People train for a long time to develop those skills, and it's one of those things. Like, I really want to develop my skills. I know that I don't have those skills. In my videos, whenever I'm sort of like butchering something or doing sort of like the backyard butchery is what I call it, I always kind of speed those little parts of the video up or cut little parts of it out. But for people who are looking to sort of develop some of those skills, maybe not even as sort of like a full-time career choice, but certainly as part of their own sort of cooking and backyard sort of things, what kind of resources or places to learn would you suggest for them?
So in terms of resources, there is an online resource which, if I can give you the link to, will you be able? So that will be the easiest way to, in terms of giving an online resource, which literally documents kind of the breakdown of lamb, pork, and beef.
Yeah,
and
cool.
that we use that as a learning tool in our industry. I know both of our butchers who went through their apprenticeships with us use that.
Cool.
And as well as learning on the job, but
Sure.
the theory side, they relied on that. In terms of other online sources, literally like our community are posting more and more kind of video content now, which you can access. There are some really kind of informative accounts out there that just share everyday butchery.
Yeah, very cool. Because it is an interesting one, like everything, I think it's one of those things that you certainly get better at as you go through. But, sometimes I'll go into my local butcher and I'll ask him to do something for me, or do something that no one else is going to ask, like if I want the whole beef shank rather than it cut up into the sort of the soup bones, or from time to time I'll want to remove the skin from something, or whatever it is. And you can tell there's a real difference between someone who knows what they're doing, even just by the way he holds the knife as he's doing certain things, or he will, he's breaking down a carcass, he will spin it a certain way that I'd say wouldn't be necessarily intuitive for people, but it's obviously the correct way to do something. And so I think that that's really
Definitely.
interesting.
There's an awful lot of kind of tips, tricks,
Sure.
practices that are in place to make your work tidier and quicker and more efficient, but also to kind of look after yourself, because it is a physically demanding job.
Sure.
I know my content I'm just there making little products and what have you, but the actual that traditional aspect of handling carcasses, we have health and safety kind of regulations on what we're meant to carry, and obviously we're carrying an awful lot more than that.
Sure.
And when you're working at the block, especially if you're going through a lot of carcasses, you can cause a lot of that, like a lot of wear and tear to your joints,
Sure.
parts of your body. I recently had the carpal tunnel operation.
Okay.
Which my doctor was very surprised when I went to him and said, I think I've got carpal tunnel. He hesitantly put me through for the test, and then I got a phone call a couple of weeks later saying, "Oh, Mr. Tindale, you have got carpal tunnel." I was like, "Yeah, thanks." So again, you're working efficiently, but you're also trying to work to put your body under as less strain as possible. Gravity is your best friend when it comes to butchery.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's a cool little tip. Very nice. Now, one of the things sort of that I've noticed, obviously, which is how I sort of came across what you've been doing, but you've got a really well-engaged social media. You've been sort of showing in a couple of really cool things lately. And when I went through, I saw a lot of questions kind of coming through, people asking things, looking for sort of reasons why maybe you do things, or sort of just sort of, I guess they were looking for tips or techniques that you're using. What's the question that you really like answering the most for these kind of people?
Any question that starts with how do you make that? Yeah. So it was kind of one of the first questions I really started seeing on the product, like the images I posted, was how do you make that?
Yeah.
And it dawned on me that whilst I'd relied on kind of intuition and trial and error to work out how other butchers I'd seen had created something, not everyone, and it's not even butchers, like members of the barbecue community or foodies in general, not everyone has the time to kind of play around with their meat like I do.
Sure.
So that's kind of what encouraged me to start making like the demo reels and what have you. And that's always really fun, because it can go, you may get kind of response in days or weeks, but all of a sudden you start getting butchers sharing their products, tagging you in their posts. And it's nice to kind of feel like you've had an impact on the trade, kind of helped it progress in some way.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. And I think that's really good too. There's all different kinds of people that utilize social media. Some of them are just looking for things that are interesting or look delicious. But I think it is really cool when you kind of really tap into that part of the community where people are looking to be inspired or to replicate or just expand sort of their understanding of what food can be. So I think that's really cool. Very cool. And
Thank
these
you.
products are obviously all for sale as well for people in your local area. So if they really like the idea of them, they can come and see you.
Yes, definitely. You like, I've had the question sometimes saying, oh, like, or making a statement saying this is just for show, and it really isn't. Like, these products that we're producing are in our cabinets.
Sure.
We're not like, when we'll kind of rotate them out weekly or monthly, and depending on the season.
Sure.
But they're all products that are doable for the butcher or for someone barbecuing or looking just to kind of vary their meal plans week to week.
Yeah, sure. No, that's awesome. Very cool. So I know that you mentioned you've got the World Butchery competition coming up real soon. What else is coming up next for you? What can people expect to see?
So in terms of my content, so to speak, I'm hoping to do more cooking content.
Cool.
I feel it's kind of an area that I haven't covered too much, and after how do you make this, that quite often I'll get the question, where's the cooked product?
Sure.
Why haven't I seen it cooked?
Yeah.
Especially like you've mentioned, it's starting to be shared to the wider public, and whilst very kindly yourself recognizes the beauty in the raw product, a lot of people still want to see it cooked. They still want to see it at the very end of its production, or the end, so it's ready to eat.
Yeah, sure.
So yes, more cooked content from Butcher Tindale.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, awesome. Now people can find you obviously on Instagram. You've got Butcher Tindale as your handle. Do you have other social medias that you'd like people to check you out on?
You can find me on TikTok as well under Butcher Tindale.
Perfect. Awesome. And people can certainly see you coming up at the World Butchery competitions.
Yes.
Now, people in your local area, you want to give a quick little plug to your store?
Definitely. So I work at Shearer Butchers, and that is the handle that you can find for Instagram, and you can find them on Facebook.
Awesome. And which city are you based in?
So we are in the back end of Beyond. The closest city to it really is. So we are in a little town called Holbeach. Our closest city would be Peterborough.
Cool. So if you're anywhere near that sort of space, make sure you're checking it out. Butchery is one of those things that I feel like we really have to support as an industry, whether that's sort of through things that are developed sort of as a more ready to cook kind of product, or things that are straight, taken from the beast, separated, broken up as a whole muscle or as a whole cut. But it's one of those things that I think people have been butchering for hundreds, thousands of years to some degree.
It literally is like one of the foundations of kind of our evolution.
Sure.
If you imagine like the Neanderthals, cavemen, if they went out hunting, they would have to butcher the animal, break it down into components that they could carry and handle, and then somewhere along the line they realized that if they cooked it, it tasted even better.
Yeah.
but barbecuing and butchery are the foundations.
Yeah.
Of everything.
When things have that much history and that much sort of tradition, I think not only is it important to support, but there's a reason why we've done that. And those many, many, many years of people investing and sort of learning those skills has obviously made a huge difference. The way you slice up a brisket is going to be different than the way you slice up the steaks. And someone had to learn that, and someone had to teach that. And now there's people like yourself who are doing that.
We are still learning as well.
Sure.
Like as an individual, I always say, like, I'm always learning. The moment you stop learning, you stop growing. But as an industry as well, like we are constantly kind of growing and innovating and adjusting the way that we butcher.
Yeah, very cool. No, very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ben. I'm sure that there are heaps of people out there watching this who are really excited about some of the things you're talking about. If you haven't already seen Ben's content, I highly, highly recommend you check it out. If not, for someone who's in the local area can buy it themselves, but certainly as someone who can be inspired by some of those amazing creations, maybe sort of get your own sort of thinking moving, getting your own sort of cook ideas out there and making some amazing food for your family and for your friends. But other than that, thank you so much, Ben. I super appreciate you coming on, and I really appreciate you sharing some insights with us.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of share our industry with all of your viewers, all of your listeners.
Love it.
It's been a pleasure.
So much.